Happy election week, everyone. It is American Patriot Elections back at it with another video, and today we're going to be doing my final House prediction. But to start, because there's 435 races, we're going to skip a lot of them because that would take like 10 hours to go over all of them. I went to the Cook Political Report, and any race that they rated either solid or likely for a certain party, I gave it to them because I don't disagree with any of their solid or likely ratings, and I don't think there's enough challenge to any of them for me to even talk about them because we don't have enough time. So what I did is I went to 270towin.com, which lets you pick which map you want to use. So I picked the cookbook report, and any likely state I just made solid, and any lean state I made a toss up, which gave us this map in 43 races to go. And remember, 43 is a lot of races, so I'm gonna not talk too much about them, which means that you might see me talk about certain data, like early vote data for one race, and I might not talk about it for another race, and that's because I probably looked at it and either deemed it unimportant or very similar to the other data, so there's no point adding more data that says the exact same thing. I'm only going to bring in extra data if it's needed, but if it's not needed, I'm not going to waste your time. But let's start with the first state, which is going to be California. We have 7 races to look at, but only 6 competitive races because Mike Levin is a popular incumbent. He won by a very strong amount in 2022, and just look at Poland, like he's not losing. His district is suburban; it's only getting bluer. No chance he loses. But for the 6 competitive races, there was a USC CSU poll that pulled them all. What's interesting is the first 5 races, they're all Republican incumbents. Republicans could only lose from all these states. Here, the current holder of the seat is Katie Porter. She's a Democrat, but there are no incumbents, and Baugh is somehow doing better than all the incumbents. What's interesting here is Baugh actually ran in 2022 against Katie Porter and lost by 3.4. That being said, Katie Porter not only being the incumbent, but had $27 million. Scott only had 3 and still got the race very close. This race between Dave Min and Scott Baugh, funding is very close. Dave Min is slightly beating Scott on funding, but nowhere near the margin in 2022. In addition, polling is looking pretty good for Scott, and early vote data is looking even better. Republicans are leading in early vote returns, and the Baugh campaign has been working relentless in their get out to vote operations that I've actually been a part of. The reason why I'm doing pretty good talking about California is just because I live in this area. I know a lot about these races, and that's why I do think that Scott will win. Michelle Steele is going up against Derek Tran. Even though Steele is the incumbent, Tran is running a very strong campaign, and I think Steele will overperform Trump, but not by enough to make her win, because I do think that Kamala's going to win this district by a pretty large margin, giving Tran the win here. With Ken Calvert against Will Rollins, Ken is an old conservative, while Rollins is a very young liberal. He's also very populist, and his campaign is so strong. They're doing incredible with early vote data. Look, they're already up by 3. I just think their strong campaign will put Rollins over, make him win. With Mike Garcia, he's a very, very strong campaigner. He lives in a very, very blue district, by won it by 12.4. And he also won that year. It wasn't the same district because they were drawn differently, but he overperformed Trump by around 10. He's just an incredible electoral juggernaut, and I do think he will win. Now with CA13 and CA22, they're both in the Central Valley. I do think the area is going to shift to the right a bit. Polling for both of them is incredibly close, but I do think the factor of incumbency and shifts right in the Central Valley will give them both the win, meaning that Democrats are going to a net gain 1 seat in California, and this is my prediction for California. Now we're on to New York, which is a state that I think will shift most to the right from 2020 to 2024. I don't think Trump's going to quite win it, but I think it's going to be much closer. I don't think it's going to be that close, but it's going to have a pretty heavy shift right. But let's get into the House. They recently redrew their maps. That's why you see NA here for past results. They put a lot of Republicans in bluer districts, meaning that I don't think that Anthony D'Esposito and Brandon Williams are going to retain their seats. I like them both, but they're just in 2 blue districts. Pat Ryan, he's a Democrat incumbent, but he also is in a very blue district, so I'm just going to give him the win. But with Michael Lawler and Mark Molinaro, they're both in pretty blue districts, but they're both pretty popular. and I do think both of the districts are going to shift very right on the presidential level, giving them both the wins in the House races. Now we have Pennsylvania with 4 races to look at. 3 of them have Democrat incumbents, and the one with the Republican incumbent, I think Scott Perry is going to win by a pretty strong amount. I don't even know why it is a toss-up, but with the 3 Democrat incumbents, they both won by the first 2 won by 2 in 2022, which was a good year for Democrats in Pennsylvania. Uh, this year, I think Republicans are going to make just pretty good gains around the entire state. Also, if you look at the presidential election, it was more narrow in 2020. I think Trump is going to win both of these districts, and I think he's going to carry both candidates over. But with Christozuio, I don't even know how to pronounce that name. I think he's going to win. That said, this is my Pennsylvania prediction. Texas is such a big state, but it only has one competitive race. And you might be thinking, how is this competitive? In 2020, voted for Biden by 15 points. And in 2022, Vincent Gonzalez won it by 8.5. That's just because this area, South Texas, is shifting incredibly right. This is just the bottom of Texas. It's shifting so right. It was way bluer in 2016. And I think it's going to continue. I think this trend is going to continue, meaning that this district will flip, and this is my prediction for Texas. I should really have some order down instead of just picking random states, but that's kind of boring. So let's do Connecticut. In Connecticut, there's only one competitive race, and this is Haynes versus Logan. Uh, it was kind of narrow in, actually really narrow in 2022, but polls have Haynes up by a couple points, so I do think she will win by a couple points. In New Jersey, Tom Keene is running for re-election. He did decent in 2022, and I think he'll retain his seat. In Ohio, Marcy Kaptur ran against Jared Majewski in 2022, which is why she won by 13.3. Jared Majewski is like this QAnon extremist. It's not going to be as big of a win as it was in 2022, but I do think she'll still narrowly win, even though Trump will win. She just has a pretty strong name. She's been in Congress since 1983, but Amelia Sykes has been in Congress since last year. She won by a decent amount, but I do think Trump's going to win this district by a good amount, and I carry Kevin Collin over. In Maine's second district, which Trump won in 2016 and 2020, Jared Golden is running for re-election. He's very, very moderate. He's also a very, very popular. He won in 2020, despite Trump also being on the ballot and Trump winning. There was this recent Survey USA poll that had him up by 12, while Trump up by 5. I don't think there's going to be a 17% ticket splitting, but I think there's still going to be a massive ticket splitting, and I do think he's going to narrowly win by like 2 or 3. Iowa has 2 competitive races. Iowa's first and Iowa's third. Both of them voted for Trump in 2020, but the Republicans underperformed Trump. That being said, Iowa is shifting right. It's shifting right pretty heavily. Miller Meeks has improved her name so much since 2020, when she barely won by like, I think, 6 votes. I think she's going to win. Zach, this race is going to be much closer, but I do think Trump's going to win by around like 4 or 5 points in the district, maybe even more. And I do think he'll be carried with the factor of incumbency to his advantage. Alaska's an interesting state because you have ranked choice voting. You see here, you have 4 candidates that you get to choose from. What you do is you rank your number 1, your number 2, your number 3, your number 4 pick. The reason why I think the Republicans lost in 2022, was because you're putting Republicans against each other, meaning that you couldn't have the party put a bunch of funds towards one side, because it's not like they were funding one candidate because they had 2 candidates to deal with. Now the NRCC is very passionate about this race. They only have 1 Republican, and they are funding him a lot, and that's why if you actually look at polling, a lot of them are paid for by the Republican Party, and those polling are looking kind of good for Buttigieg, which is why I do think he will narrowly win. Very narrow, by the way. This might be the closest race I've talked about yet. Next, we got Nebraska, which splits their electoral votes based off congressional district, meaning that if Kamala wins this district, which she's trying to, she's going to win 1 electoral vote. And the reason why that's important is that Kamala has put a good amount of money in this district, meaning that if she wins by a lot, she's going to carry over Tony Vargas. And as of now, Tony Vargas is doing really good in polls, and I do think he's going to be Nebraska's second next congressman. Just like New York, North Carolina recently redrew their line, so we don't have old data. But Don Davis is polling up by a lot. I don't know if Trump's going to win or lose this district. It's going to be pretty close, but I think he's going to carry his seat by a pretty healthy margin. Virginia is a state that was very blue in 2020, but elected a Republican governor in 2021. I think there's going to be a pretty good shift to the right. I don't think it's going to be crazy. I don't think Trump's going to win the state, but I think it's going to shift right. Looking at the first race, I do think Kiggins is going to win. Power of incumbency. She won by a decent margin. Trump might even carry this district, so I do think she's going to win. Uh, but now you have an open seat in Virginia's 7th district. It wasn't too blue in 2022, but it still was decently blue. Without the power of incumbency, the race is going to be kind of narrow, but polling does have Vindman up by like 1 to 2. I think that will stay. I do think Vindman will win by 1 to 2. In Michigan, John James is running for re-election. He ran for Senate twice. He lost both times, but he got very close, and he even outperformed Trump in 2020. I think Trump's going to improve in his district this year, meaning that I also do think he's going to overperform Trump, so I really don't see this going blue. With the Slotkin district, she's retiring to run for Senate against Mike Rogers. It was very close in 2020. I think Trump's going to win this district without any power of incumbency, any big things. Both candidates are kind of middle of the road. So I do think it's going to flip Republican, just like the district is flipping towards Trump. The last district, Jones is surprisingly up by polls. I didn't really think this would flip, but Jones is doing pretty good. And I kind of started to think about this. Not only was 2022 a great year for Michigan Democrats, but he's also been an incumbent since 2013, so he has a lot of name recognition. But now without that, without any incumbency, with Trump winning this district probably by 3 or 4, even more, I do think that this district is going to flip Republican, which also gets us to a 219 Republican. Meaning that as of now, I'm predicting that the Republicans have the House, but there's still 11 seats to go. And let's get into them. In New Mexico, Gabriel Vasquez barely won in 2022 in a district that Biden won by 6, but I do think that Kamala is going to narrowly win this, and Vasquez has the power of incumbency and will overperform Kamala slightly, so I do think he's also going to win. In Colorado, you have two competitive races. The first is the the current seat of the extremist Lauren Boebert, but she decided to run in this seat because this seat is much safer than this one, and she barely won by 0.2 in 2022. But because now you don't have an extremist running, and she was still able to win in a crazy extremist, and Trump won it by a pretty decent margin in 2020, I think that it'll go red. With Colorado's 8th district. Not only are you against the power of incumbency here, but Colorado is only getting bluer, so I think that it'll go blue. The Cook political report has a Maryland 6th district as lean Democrat, which makes no sense. Look how much you voted for Biden, 9.8. Look how much you voted for Trump, 9.6. It's not going red. There's just no chance. It's easily blue. In Wisconsin's 3rd district, Derek Van Orden is running for re-election. Trump won the district by a good amount despite losing the state in 2020. I think Trump's still going to win this district by a lot. Even if Kamala wins Wisconsin by like 4 or 5, Trump's still going to win the district. And I think Derek Van Orden is going to run very close to Trump. So I think he's almost certain to win. In Montana, you have its 1st district, which Trump won by a good amount. It was more close than it should have been in 2022, but it's still mostly a red district, and it's still most likely going to vote for Ryan Zinke. Predicting Washington's 3rd district is incredibly difficult because in 2022, 538, which is owned by Disney, gave Joe Kent a 98% chance of winning. He ended up losing in a massive upset, and now he's running again against Mary Perez. This district voted for Trump by 4.2, and I think Trump's going to have a similar or even better margin. In addition, the reason why Joe Kent lost was a big factor was him just not getting a lot of low propensity voters out. And those low propensity voters usually vote in presidential elections anyways, meaning that he's going to just gain voters. And because he gained voters, he's just going to gain votes. And I think those extra votes are going to make him beat Perez. Arizona's 1st and 6th district are incredibly different. The first is very suburban and white, while the 6th is very Hispanic. Hispanics are shifting right, while suburban white people are shifting to the left. That being said, they both won in 2022, which, if you don't know, was a terrible year for Republicans in Arizona. They elected a Democrat governor, a Democrat senator by like 5 points. And if they're able to win in that terrible environment, I think this year is going to be a much better environment. I think they're both going to win. I think Schweikart's going to narrowly win, while Siscomani, is that how you pronounce it? I don't know, is going to do much better. He might even win by 5 or even more. In Oregon's 5th district, Chavez de Remer is a strong candidate, but I think her district is just too blue for her to win in a presidential year. So unfortunately, it's going blue. And finally, we have Nevada. In Nevada, Democrat Susie Lee is running for re-election in her very blue district. I think it's going to narrow up a lot this year, but I just don't think it's going to narrow up enough for Johnson to win. It's going blue. This is my final prediction. Republicans are going to get 225 House seats in the majority, and Democrats are going to get 210 seats. But last, I just want to tell you guys to all follow my Twitter. I'm going to be more active here. There's some fun stuff like my old Senate prediction from January. Just look how blue it is, and look how red it is now. The button's right there if you want to click on it on the left. If you want to subscribe, click on the right. But make sure to like this video and leave a comment for any questions you have for me. But just thank you guys so much for watching. My presidential prediction is coming soon, so have a great rest of your day.